Let's cross now to France 24's Catherine Norris-Trent in Paris. So, Catherine, what's the scene where you are, and what are organizers expecting in terms of numbers today?
Hi there, Monty. I'm in the Place de l'Opéra in the center of Paris, where the crowds are now starting to gather. There are more and more people flocking in here. The trade unions have got their stands and their vans out, as you can see behind me, and they're gearing up for another big protest march through Paris. And they are hoping that they can keep on getting large numbers of the people onto the streets on this 12th National Day of protest. Numbers have been dwindling a bit. At one stage, there were more than 1 million people coming out onto the streets of the French capital by the Interior Ministry's count. They've been down in recent weeks. And this law has now been passed through Parliament, albeit forced through using the 49.3 constitutional tool there by the government. A lot of people still very angry about that. But basically, now it's all but become law. And there is a sense that while the people here I've been speaking to are very determined here today, that there's a bit of a sense of defeatism too, that people telling us that they feel quite sceptical, they feel cynical, disheartened, they think this law is going to go through. But they still remain angry, Monty, and so we're bracing perhaps for another day of tensions towards the end of the day's protest. We know that groups of rioters have been battling with French riot police at the end of recent days of protest. There's a big security presence. Banks and luxury shops around this central Paris area have been boarded up. So we'll have to wait and see what goes on, but the mood here is still pretty angry and pretty defiant.
Well, Catherine, of course, this all comes before tomorrow's big ruling from the Constitutional Council on these pension reforms. How are protesters thinking about this decision that we're expecting tomorrow?
A lot of tension is on what the Constitutional Council in France will have to say. Basically, tomorrow they give their final verdict on whether these pension reforms can become law. So this is set to be a bit of a flashpoint. People waiting here saying they think the law will go through. A couple of groups of protesters told me, but they say they're still going to come out onto the streets anyway. And if it is indeed passed, well, that could prove another flashpoint for protests and violence. The Constitutional Council, though, could strike down the law, strike down some of the law, or even allow, well, the left-wing opposition have called for a referendum on it. Now that could plunge French politics into chaos for the next 15 months. That would be quite a curveball. So the government and the protesters are watching that decision very closely ahead of tomorrow's ruling.
Okay, France 24's Catherine Norris-Trent reporting for us in Paris. Catherine, thanks as always.